Mark Kelly just faced the courtroom like never before. And what happened next left everyone speechless. Generals quitting, explosive evidence revealed, and a court-martial turning into total chaos. This is the moment that's shaking Washington to its core. You won't believe what he did next. The room was tense. Mark Kelly sat rigidly at the front, a storm of tension building around him. It wasn't just another court-martial. It was shaping up to be the most explosive confrontation in recent military and political history. The generals assigned to oversee his case were visibly on edge, their expressions betraying a mix of frustration, disbelief, and fear of what the proceedings could unleash. Kelly, confident yet audacious, seemed almost unfazed, leaning back slightly, his gaze scanning the room as if daring anyone to challenge him. As the session began, the atmosphere thickened. Every word uttered, every motion made, felt heavy with consequence. Kelly's defense attorney started meticulously laying out the sequence of events that had led to this unprecedented moment. Allegations had piled up for months: insubordination, breaches of protocol, questionable command decisions, but Kelly's team was determined to paint a different picture, one of miscommunication, overzealous accusations, and a system struggling to keep pace with the pressures of military leadership in turbulent times. The generals, all seasoned figures with decades of experience, were clearly growing uneasy. One of them, a stern-looking officer with a reputation for unwavering discipline, leaned forward and interjected, challenging some of the claims. These actions are not just procedural errors, they're violations that can't be ignored, he barked. The room held its collective breath, expecting Kelly to falter under the intensity. But Kelly didn't flinch. Instead, he responded with calculated calm, his voice steady, almost chilling in its poise. With all due respect, General, these events had been mischaracterized. I've followed protocol to the best of my understanding, and any discrepancies are systemic rather than personal. This isn't a failure on my part, it's a reflection of a larger operational breakdown. His words, though measured, cut through the tension like a blade. Witnesses were called next, and the evidence was presented in painstaking detail. Every report, every email, and every testimony from the chain of command seemed to push the generals further to the edge. Some scribbled notes furiously, others exchanged nervous glances. Kelly's strategy was working. He was not only defending himself, but simultaneously exposing the cracks in the system that had led to this moment. As the hours ticked by, the general's frustration became palpable. Murmurs began circulating across the room, whispers of doubt and disagreement. Kelly noticed it, but made no outward reaction, his expression unreadable, almost taunting. One of the generals finally slammed his hand on the table, breaking the silence. Enough. We cannot continue under these circumstances. This is untenable. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Kelly's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the shift in power dynamics. The courtroom had shifted. The balance that once favored authority was now teetering. The generals were no longer in full control, and the tension was reaching a critical point. Outside the courtroom, staff and reporters waited, unaware of the full scale of the drama unfolding within. Kelly's reputation, already a subject of intense scrutiny, was about to reach new heights or depths, depending on one's perspective. His every move, every reaction, was calculated, and he seemed to understand the optics as well as the legal intricacies of his case. By the time the session ended for the day, the generals had made a shocking declaration. Several of them were walking out. "We are done here," one announced firmly, his voice echoing through the chamber. The others followed suit, their departure a dramatic display of protest and frustration, leaving Kelly momentarily alone in the courtroom. The room, once bustling with authority, now felt eerily silent, almost reverent, as if acknowledging the unprecedented nature of what had just occurred. Kelly, despite the chaos, appeared unshaken. His eyes scanned the emptying room, his lips curling into a faint, almost imperceptible smirk. This wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. The court-martial had shifted. The power dynamics altered. And the story of Mark Kelly's confrontation with military leadership had taken a dramatic, unanticipated turn. What had started as a standard proceeding had now evolved into a high-stakes showdown, the outcome of which would send ripples through military and political circles for months to come. The next morning, the courtroom was packed with observers, journalists, and military personnel, all eager to witness the fallout from the previous day's dramatic exit. The tension was palpable. Whispers of disbelief and speculation filled the air. Kelly arrived calm, composed, his presence commanding attention without a single word. The generals who had walked out yesterday were noticeably absent, and their absence sent a clear message. The proceedings were no longer following a predictable course. The lead judge entered, a tall figure with an imposing presence, and immediately called the room to order. He addressed Kelly with an intensity that matched the gravity of the situation. "Mr. Kelly, the conduct yesterday was unprecedented. Your actions have left the court in a difficult position." His tone was stern, yet Kelly remained poised, replying with measured confidence. "Your Honor, my intent has never been to disrupt proceedings. I am here to address the facts, and the facts must be evaluated as they stand, free from external pressure or personal opinion." The courtroom fell silent. Kelly's ability to maintain composure under pressure was unnerving, and it was clear that everyone present felt it. Witnesses were called, each offering testimony that further complicated the narrative. Officers from multiple branches recounted instances of alleged misconduct, procedural oversights, and controversial decisions. Yet, Kelly's team meticulously dissected each claim, presenting counter-evidence that revealed gaps, inconsistencies, and contradictions in the accounts. By mid-morning, it was apparent that the court was grappling with more than just Kelly's alleged infractions. The focus had shifted to the integrity and coordination of the entire command structure. Generals who had previously wielded unquestioned authority were now under scrutiny themselves, their credibility and judgment being questioned openly. The courtroom had transformed into a battleground of accountability, and Kelly was at the center, navigating it with surgical precision. As proceedings continued, Kelly strategically called for an independent audit of operational protocols, a move that stunned both the prosecution and the absent generals. The request was calculated, designed to highlight systemic flaws while protecting his personal defense. The judge, though visibly irritated, had no choice but to consider the motion, recognizing that the legal framework required an impartial review. Kelly's calculated maneuvering had successfully turned the tide, placing the pressure on the very leadership that had sought to hold him accountable. Outside the courtroom, the media frenzy escalated. Clips of Kelly's calm yet assertive exchanges circulated rapidly, capturing the attention of national news outlets. Analysts debated the implications of his strategy. Was Kelly manipulating the proceedings to his advantage, or was he genuinely exposing deep-seated issues within the military command? Social media exploded with commentary, memes, and speculation, propelling the case into the public consciousness. Kelly's every move was dissected, praised, and criticized in equal measure. Inside, tensions reached another peak when an unexpected witness appeared. A senior officer who had previously supported the absent generals. Their testimony contradicted several earlier statements, revealing gaps in the narrative that had been presented against Kelly. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as documents were presented, highlighting miscommunications, lapses in protocol, and procedural irregularities that had been overlooked. Kelly's team seized the moment, questioning the integrity of the chain of command and emphasizing the inconsistencies in the accusations. The pressure mounted. Further, when one of the previously absent generals sent a formal objection to the judge, requesting a delay in proceedings, It was a dramatic escalation, signaling the fear and uncertainty spreading through the ranks. Kelly, sensing the shift in power, remained composed. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the visible tension of the military officials and legal representatives, reinforcing his command over the narrative. By late afternoon, the courtroom had become a scene of calculated strategy, where each statement, motion, and objection carried enormous weight. Kelly's ability to anticipate and counter every move had not only defended him, but also exposed the fragility of the system around him. Observers noted that the case had evolved beyond a simple court-martial. It had become a public spectacle, a dramatic unraveling of command authority, and a test of accountability at the highest levels. As the session concluded for the day, the judge reluctantly acknowledged the complexity Kelly had introduced into the proceedings. This court will reconvene after a full review of the submitted evidence and testimony. The situation requires careful consideration. Kelly nodded, a faint, confident smile crossing his face. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving an air of suspense hanging over the proceedings. Outside, reporters scrambled to summarize the day's developments, already framing Kelly's approach. As a masterclass in courtroom strategy and tactical precision, the echoes of yesterday's departures, combined with today's revelations, signaled a turning point. Kelly had not only defended himself, but had also reshaped the narrative entirely. The generals who once wielded unquestioned authority were now forced to reconsider their positions, their strategies unraveling under the weight of Kelly's calculated responses. The story was far from over. But one fact was undeniable. The court-martial had transformed into a high-stakes confrontation that would define Kelly's career and leave a lasting imprint on military oversight and public perception the following morning. Anticipation in the courtroom reached a fever pitch. Word had spread rapidly about the previous day's dramatic developments, and journalists, military analysts, and onlookers crowded the benches, eager to witness the next phase of this unfolding crisis. Kelly entered with the same quiet confidence, his presence commanding attention without uttering a word. Cameras captured every movement, every expression, as if the very room held its breath. The judge wasted no time, calling the session to order with a sharp rap of the gavel. "We will proceed with today's testimonies and review of submitted evidence," he announced. There was an unspoken acknowledgement that the previous day's disruptions had significantly altered the courtroom's dynamic. Kelly, seated with his legal team, remained composed, occasionally reviewing documents and whispering quietly to his attorneys. His strategic precision was apparent to all, projecting an image of control even as the tension in the room thickened. The first witness called was a senior administrative officer who had been hesitant to speak previously. Their testimony carried weight, revealing discrepancies in communication channels, misfiled reports, and procedural lapses that inadvertently benefited Kelly's defense. The courtroom murmured as Kelly's team skillfully highlighted these flaws, questioning the credibility of prior statements and drawing attention to the inconsistencies in the chain of command. Every detail was meticulously dissected, reinforcing the narrative that systemic issues rather than individual misconduct were at the heart of the matter. Kelly then took the stand, a move that surprised many observers. Unlike the tense, defensive posture one might expect, he exuded calm authority. He answered questions clearly, providing detailed explanations of his actions, operational decisions, and compliance with military protocols. When challenged on points of alleged misconduct, he responded with clarity and composure, emphasizing accountability, transparency, and the importance of following established procedures. Each answer was deliberate, calculated to expose flaws in the opposition's claims while reinforcing his credibility. The courtroom atmosphere grew increasingly tense as Kelly's testimony unfolded. Every counterpoint presented by the prosecution was met with evidence, documentation, or corroborating witness statements. Analysts in the gallery whispered among themselves, noting the meticulous preparation evident in Kelly's responses. Even those who were initially skeptical began to reassess the situation, recognizing that the case had evolved into a complex examination of systemic weaknesses. Rather than a straightforward court-martial of an individual, a dramatic moment occurred when an unexpected motion was submitted by Kelly's legal team. A request to summon internal communications from multiple high-ranking officers. The documents, once obtained, revealed internal disagreements, lapses in oversight, and conflicting interpretations of protocols that had contributed to the alleged infractions. The judge, visibly reluctant but bound by procedure, had no choice but to approve the motion. The courtroom erupted with quiet murmurs as this development further shifted the momentum in Kelly's favor. Outside the courthouse, news outlets raced to cover the escalating drama. Social media platforms buzzed with speculation, clips of Kelly's calm yet assertive testimony circulating rapidly. Analysts debated the significance of the documents being reviewed, noting that they could reshape public perception and redefine the narrative surrounding the court-martial. Kelly's every move was scrutinized, praised, and criticized, amplifying the intensity of the situation in real time. Back inside, tensions reached a peak when a series of video recordings from prior operational briefings were presented. These clips, some previously undisclosed, showcased procedural adherence, transparency, and accountability in Kelly's decisions. The courtroom watched in silence as inconsistencies in prior allegations became increasingly apparent. Kelly's team capitalized on the opportunity, cross-examining witnesses and pointing out the contrasts between claimed misconduct and recorded evidence. The strategic precision was remarkable, leaving both the prosecution and the absent generals scrambling to adjust their approach. As the day progressed, Kelly's influence over the proceedings became undeniable. The courtroom's attention shifted repeatedly between witnesses, evidence, and his calm, authoritative presence. The absent generals, previously seen as untouchable, now faced questions about their oversight and judgment. Their credibility subtly eroded with each revelation. Kelly's approach had transformed the court-martial from a singular case into a systemic critique, exposing vulnerabilities in command structures and procedural oversight. By late afternoon, the judge paused proceedings to review the newly submitted evidence and testimonies. The room, now thick with tension, waited in silence. Kelly, ever composed, remained seated, reviewing notes and quietly discussing strategy with his team. Observers noted the stark contrast between his calm demeanor and the evident strain among the other officials involved. It was clear that Kelly's methodical, precise strategy had shifted the balance of power in the courtroom, creating a situation that few could have predicted. The session concluded with the judge issuing instructions for additional documentation to be provided before the next hearing. Kelly's team left the courtroom with quiet confidence, knowing they had successfully reinforced the narrative of systemic flaws and procedural oversights. Outside, reporters scrambled to summarize the day's events, framing Kelly's performance as a masterclass in strategy and composure under pressure. The public perception was already shifting, positioning Kelly as not just a defendant, but a figure who had successfully navigated a high-stakes, complex legal and military landscape with remarkable acumen. The next morning, the courtroom was packed beyond expectation. Media crews jostled for the best angles, analysts whispered in hushed tones, and military officials from various branches observed intently. The tension was palpable, but Kelly entered with his characteristic calm, projecting authority without a single word. His presence alone seemed to quiet the room, drawing attention from every corner. The day began with the judge reviewing the latest submissions, internal communications from high-ranking officers, operational reports, and video evidence had now been added to the case file. The judge emphasized the need to scrutinize these materials carefully, acknowledging the complexity of the evidence and the significance of its implications. Kelly's team watched closely, knowing that this was a crucial moment that could decisively influence the court-martial's trajectory. When testimony resumed, it became evident that Kelly's meticulous preparation was paying off. Witnesses called by the prosecution stumbled under questioning, their prior statements contradicted by the newly submitted documents. Kelly's legal team highlighted procedural inconsistencies, miscommunications, and lapses in oversight that weakened the foundation of the charges. Observers noted the courtroom's growing awareness that the issue at hand extended beyond a single individual. It was a reflection of systemic failures. Within the command structure, Kelly himself was called to provide additional clarification. He delivered precise, concise explanations for his decisions, detailing adherence to regulations, transparency in reporting, and accountability measures he had implemented. His calm, authoritative tone contrasted sharply with the evident frustration among opposing parties. Every answer seemed carefully measured, designed to deflect criticism while reinforcing his credibility. Analysts later remarked that his performance resembled a masterclass in legal strategy under intense scrutiny. A pivotal moment came when previously unseen communications between generals were revealed. The documents showed disagreements over operational decisions, misinterpretations of policy, and delays in reporting that had inadvertently created the appearance of misconduct. Kelly's team seized the opportunity, cross-referencing the documents with witness testimony to expose contradictions. The courtroom reacted with quiet astonishment as the narrative shifted. Kelly was no longer the sole focus. Oversight failures and systemic weaknesses were now squarely in the spotlight. Outside, the news spread like wildfire. Social media erupted with clips highlighting Kelly's composed testimony and the newly revealed documents. Analysts debated the implications of the evidence, speculating on potential consequences for senior officials and the broader military command. The narrative shifted rapidly, painting Kelly not just as a defendant, but as a figure who had skillfully navigated an intricate web of institutional oversight issues. Inside the courtroom, the intensity escalated when a new set of video recordings was introduced. These clips captured key operational briefings, moments of strategic decision-making, and procedural compliance. Kelly's team used the footage to systematically dismantle allegations of misconduct, drawing attention to adherence to protocol and transparent communication. The judge, visibly engaged, requested clarifications at several points, further emphasizing the significance of the materials. Each revelation tightened Kelly's position while exposing weaknesses in the prosecution's case. By mid-afternoon, the courtroom atmosphere was electric. Every participant understood that the trajectory of the case had dramatically changed. Kelly's calm, methodical approach had transformed the proceedings into a broader examination of procedural and systemic accountability. The absent generals, once perceived as untouchable, now faced scrutiny over lapses that had contributed to the very charges they initially pursued. The courtroom had become a stage where strategy, composure, and evidence intersected in a high-stakes drama that few could have anticipated. As the session drew to a close, the judge outlined the requirements for additional evidence and the schedule for the next hearing. Kelly's team departed with quiet confidence, knowing that the momentum had shifted decisively in their favor. Outside, reporters scrambled to summarize the day's developments, highlighting Kelly's strategic acumen, the emerging systemic concerns, and the shifting public perception. Social media engagement surged, with clips and analyses circulating rapidly, reinforcing the story's viral potential. By the end of the day, it was clear to all observers that the court-martial had evolved far beyond its original scope. Kelly had not only defended himself effectively, but had also illuminated procedural vulnerabilities and leadership inconsistencies within the military structure. Analysts predicted that the repercussions would be felt long after the hearings concluded, and public opinion increasingly favored Kelly's methodical, transparent, and composed approach as the courthouse emptied. Kelly's calm presence contrasted sharply with the tension and confusion surrounding the other officials. The day had solidified his reputation not only as a disciplined military officer, but as a strategic force capable of navigating one of the most complex legal and institutional challenges in recent history. The story of this court-martial was no longer about individual wrongdoing. It was a high-stakes exploration of accountability, leadership, and the intricate balance of power within the military hierarchy.